Part 85. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 841. Chapter 841 Pretending to be sick to gain sympathy 6. Leaning on the doorframe, his eyes were slightly squinted, his lips were a little white, he took a deep breath, put away the happy smile on his face, and slowly opened the door. When Jianyuman came to Tanyu's residence with the ingredients, she stood at the door a little uneasy, waiting for Tanyuj to open the door quickly. She didn't wait until someone opened the door. She also wondered whether Tanyuj would faint inside, so no one came over. Open the door. When the door finally opened, a handsome face with a poor complexion and a haggard look came into view. When those eyes saw her in person, the flash of joy immediately dissipated, and then disappeared without a trace, making people wonder if the joy just now was dazzling. Jianur, you're finally here. Tanyuj opened his mouth slightly. He was wearing a large coat, his neck was tucked into his inner coat, and the smile on his face was forced. He looked really bad. Jianyuman frowned and scolded with a straight face. Are you sleeping without a quilt? I told you before that you should cover your stomach when you sleep, otherwise you will catch a cold. During the time they were together, Jianyuman discovered that Tanyuj had a bad habit of sleeping. He would always lift the quilt under his belly, and his pajamas would slide up to expose his navel. She would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night to cover him with quilt, but after they got together, he liked to sleep with her in his arms, and this habit gradually changed. But as long as she is away, his bad habit will appear. Well, I'm not feeling well, so don't lecture me. Sugar Baby pouted and leaned against the wall, shaking his body and drawing circles on the wall with his fingers. Sugar Baby's pretending to be pitiful was very effective. As expected, Jianyuman suppressed all the things she wanted to say. She glared at Tanyuj angrily for a while, stretched out her hand to hold his arm, and put it on hers. He helped him into the room on his shoulders. Be careful. Jianyuman's tone was much softer and she supported her carefully. A certain baby who pushed forward put almost all his weight on Jianyuman, walking slowly with a slow pace. The two bodies were very close to each other. As long as he took a deep breath, he could smell the smell that belonged to her. Of fragrance. The body fragrance that comes out without the need for perfume. It's been a long time since I've smelled this smell, and it's rare for the two of them to be in such close contact. Last time at the Royal Hotel, although he kissed her forcefully, the distance between the two of them had never been so close, and it was she who took the initiative to come over. He turned slightly and could see the graceful curve of her neck and feel the rhythm of her breathing. You're dead again. What did you eat to grow up? Jianyuman felt the weight on her body and it was a little difficult to walk. It seems that she is still not strong enough and needs to continue to exercise to reduce the fat on her body. Tanyuj usually looks thin, even a little bit thin, but his weight is not small at all. Just eat rice, Tanyuj muttered, reducing the weight on Jianyuman. Jianyuman walked for a minute to reach the bedroom. Jianyuman threw Tanyuj on the bed, covered him with a quilt, and reached out to touch his forehead. The temperature was not very hot. Tanyuj's eyes flickered while he was lying on the bed. Fortunately, he was prepared. He immediately took out the thermometer from his armpit and stuffed it into Jianyuman's hand. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 842. Chapter 842, Pretending to be sick to gain sympathy 7. Jianyuman immediately looked at the temperature on the thermometer. She was startled by the sight, and her expression became panicked. 40 degrees, why is it so hot? This temperature is fatal. You should go to the hospital quickly. 40 degrees, this temperature is frighteningly high, and it is considered abnormally high. Tanyuj, who was lying on the bed, heard the temperature of 40 degrees, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. It seemed that he had been covering the hot water bottle for a long time, and holding it under his arm had already lowered the temperature a little. Fortunately, he didn't show it to her directly. Maybe the temperature would have been higher. Straddle. But he still had to pretend to be weak, waving his paws and smiling weakly. Don't be nervous. I've already seen him and given me a fever-reducing injection. Just let me rest and I'll be fine. I protested as usual, and the temperature won't affect me at all. Tianyuman looked at the temperature and then at Tanyu's weak appearance. She narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at Tanyuj with a sophisticated look. The complexion looks haggard, the thermometer is on the high side, but the body temperature is normal. Although his tone was a little weak, he still had the strength to say such a long list of words, which meant it was not serious yet, or even. Several possibilities flashed through her mind quickly, and then she thought that maybe she was overthinking it, and immediately shook these possibilities out of her mind. Is it really okay? Tanyuj shook his head, opened his mouth, and suddenly took Tianyuman's hand to comfort him. It's really fine. The doctor came to see me and said everything is fine. I'm so hungry now. Go and help me make something delicious, okay? Tanyuj's eyes were pleading, like a puppy waiting for favor, and he looked at Tianyuman imploringly. Chu-Chu's pitiful look made Tianyuman's heart soften, and then she reached out and patted his hand gently. You have a good sleep. I will wake you up when I make something delicious. Tanyuj closed his labored eyes, his voice was a single sound coming from his throat, and he looked really weak. Tianyuman withdrew her hand that was firmly held by Tanyuj, and took the ingredients into the kitchen, which had never been opened. Although the kitchen had not cooked, there were still basic seasonings. When Tianyuman entered the kitchen to cook, Tanyuj was so happy that he almost cheered in the room. However, in order to prevent Tianyuman from catching him, he still had fun under the covers. Thinking of Tianyuman's concerned eyes just now, my heart warmed, and I smelled the fragrance wafting from the kitchen, and an unprecedented sense of satisfaction rose in my heart. Finally able to eat delicious food cooked by my wife again, so satisfying. I really want to be able to eat what my wife cooks every day, but if I want to eat it every day again, I have to work hard to make her fall in love with him again. All Kenny God blessings will go away, Chiener will belong to him in this life. The aroma continued to spread to the room, and Tanyuj was almost drooling. Unfortunately, as a patient, he could not eat out at the moment, so he could only lie in bed and be a patient, waiting for the delicious food to be delivered to his mouth. After waiting for a long time this time, when Tanyuj was about to fall asleep, Tianyuman finally came in with the preserved egg and lean meat porridge that Tanyuj had requested. At this moment, Tanyuj's eyes were closed tightly, his brows were furrowed, and he didn't seem to be sleeping very soundly. Tianyuman put the porridge in her hand on the bedside table and stood aside quietly watching Tanyuj sleep. Seeing his uncomfortable appearance, she felt a dull pain in her heart. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 843. Chapter 843, Pretending to be sick to gain sympathy 8. Tianyuman hadn't watched Tanyuj sleeping quietly for a long time, watching him wrinkle his forehead uncomfortably because of the illness, and couldn't help but reach out and gently touch his frown. Under her caress, his brows gradually became flat, a faint smile even appeared on the corners of his mouth, and his expression became much more relaxed. Her fingers were still on his forehead. Her fingers were very eager to touch his handsome face. It had been a long time since she had quietly watched his appearance and touched his face. Her heart was very eager to be touched, but she could only think of their current relationship. In the end, she restrained her truest thoughts and slowly withdrew her hand. Their marriage has ended, and the man in front of her no longer belongs to her, and may even belong to another woman. She could no longer treat him as she had in the past, let alone touch this face that she loved so much. He no longer belongs to her. This sentence kept recurring in my heart, and at the same time I warned myself that I must restrain my inner desires. I don't know how much strength I used to retract my hand from his face. She had just retracted her hand and was about to wake Tanyuj up to drink porridge. A certain patient on the bed stretched out his long arm, grabbed the hand of Jian Yuman who was sitting on the edge of the bed, and pushed it hard into his arms. Pull! Ah! Jian Yuman screamed. Before she could recover, her body was already lying in Tanyuj's warm embrace. Her hands were still aiming at someone's chest very accurately. One hand touched one chest muscle, and the two people on the upper body she pressed against him tightly. Her face felt a little hard against his chest. The arms that pulled her into his arms were placed on her hips, and the other hand held her waist tightly. Wife Tanyuj's pleasant and magnetic voice sounded in her ears. His voice was hoarse and weak. Hearing this familiar call, Jian Yuman's heart throbbed violently, and the feelings that had been suppressed for a long time were about to be released in an instant. This simple call from his wife had not been heard for 2 years and 7 months. It had been 3 years since the last time he called her this way. More than 2 years ago, on the day they officially broke up, she said a lot of cruel words, and his wife screamed so heartbreakingly. Why did he still call her wife? They were clearly divorced. What did he mean by calling that? Jian Yuman slowly raised her head and saw that Tanyuj's eyes were still closed, his forehead that had been smoothed by the touch was wrinkled, and his expression looked a little painful. Still sleeping? Jian Yuman stared at Tanyuj's face. His eyes were still closed. Although his hands were placed in an ambiguous place, he was very honest and did not touch them randomly. I found that he was just asleep, and he might not even be conscious when he spoke. He was not shouting while he was awake at all. A possibility appeared in her mind. Thinking that the person he called his wife might not be her, and that the person he called his wife might be someone else, she felt a surge of anger in her heart. But seeing the evil smile at the corner of his mouth, Jian Yuman broke away from his arms in an instant like cold water pouring down from the top of her head. A pair of beautiful eyes glared at Tanyuj like fire. She suddenly sat up from the bed and glanced at the water glass on the bedside table. He immediately picked up the water glass, poured a full glass of warm water, and poured it on Tanyuj's handsome face. Tanyuj had his eyes closed a moment ago. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 844. Chapter 844 Jealous Women 1. Tanyuj, who had his eyes closed a moment ago, jumped up from the bed the moment Jian Yuman splashed water on him, wiped the water stains on his face with both hands, and looked at Jian Yuman with a blank look on his face. Jian, what are you doing? Tanyuj looked at Jian Yuman in confusion. He saw Jian Yuman glaring at him with blazing eyes. He had one hand on his waist and the other hand was still holding the glass of water that he had just poured on him, grinning. Tanyuj was stunned for a second, and then his legs weakened and he fell back on the bed. He looked weak, hugging the quilt and wailing. Jian, I'm sick. Although my fever reaches 40 degrees, I can't withstand your drinking a glass of water. Even so, it won't cool down. Tanyuj's attitude changed too quickly. Regardless of the fact that there were still a lot of water stains on his body and face, he opened one eye pitifully to peek at Jian Yuman's reaction. The moment he was splashed with water, he jumped up as if nothing was wrong, which might have revealed the fact that he was not sick. You still have the nerve to pretend to be stupid? You're not sick at all. The water glass in Jian Yuman's hand was placed heavily on the window sill, and it made a violent sound. However, how angry she was at the moment, she could actually make such a violent sound. At the same time, the person on the bed was shocked and buried his wet face even more in the quilt, pretending not to know anything. You said you are a good person, why are you pretending? Don't think it will be fine if you don't speak. Jianyuman pulled Tanyu's quilt angrily. Tanyuj clutched the quilt tightly, still making a death struggle and groaning. Jianur, what are you talking about, why can't I understand what you are saying? He also gave an innocent look, indicating that he didn't understand what Jianyuman was talking about at all. You're pretending to be stupid. You're not sick, Jianyuman said calmly. She pulled the quilt with both hands to no avail and threw away the quilt in her hands. I thought your temperature was normal when I came here. How do you look like a sick person? The thermometer actually measured 40 degrees. I thought it was abnormal. How could your doctor just sit back and ignore your situation and not take you to the hospital? Observe. I am an idiot to be deceived by you. Secretary Zhang doesn't care about you when he is in love? This kind of stupid thing is only useful to deceive me. From the moment I came in, I noticed a lot of things that were wrong, but I didn't think about it carefully. Little did he know that he was simply fooled by this Tanyuj. This was not sick at all and actually pretended to be so. The temperature is normal, and although the speech rate is slow, he can say a lot of words in one breath. The patient feels tired even if he speaks more than one word. The force he held her in his arms just now was so strong that she looked like a patient with a fever of 40 degrees. So she realized within a few seconds that she had been tricked by Tanyuj. This was not sick at all and deliberately pretended to be sick to trick her into this place. I'm really sick, a certain giant baby who was still making its final death struggle murmured pitifully, grabbing the quilt and squirming like a silkworm baby. Just keep pretending, I'm going home, you bastard. Jianyuman turned around angrily and was about to leave. As soon as Tanyuj heard that she was leaving, he immediately jumped up from the bed. Don't go. Jianyuman stopped and slowly turned around to look at Tanyuj, who looked weak before. Sure enough, this man was really pretending to be sick to her. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 845. Chapter 845 Jealous Women 2. Can't you pretend anymore? Jianyuman laughed sarcastically. Tanyuj sat cross-legged on the bed and turned his head angrily. I just want to eat the food you cooked. Am I wrong? Is it wrong for him to just find a reason to want to see her more? How long has it been since they last met? Does she know? 3 whole days. How long has it been since they got along well? Does he know? They haven't communicated with Yanyus for a long time, does she know? He just pretended to be sick to win his sympathy, and had no other intention. At the same time, he tasted his wife's love porridge that he hadn't eaten for a long time. But he knew their current relationship and how difficult it was to have another taste, so he resorted to this method. Jianyuman pointed to the porridge not far away and said, I've done it. Your goal has been achieved. I can go. Jianyuman turned around to leave. Tanyuj saw it and immediately yelled unhappily. Go away, go away. You think I want to see a bad face? Facing Jianyuman's distant expression, he had had enough of it and immediately burst out with dissatisfaction. Humph! Jianyuman snorted angrily when she heard this, walked out quickly, and left without looking back. You think I'm happy to come to you? Even if you begged me to come, I won't come if you invite me next time. After Jianyuman left, Tanyuj immediately grabbed the quilt and threw it to the ground angrily. He beat the door angrily with both hands, and he was very strong. If the door was not of good quality, an ordinary door would have been broken by his anger. Can't this woman see that I'm deliberately pretending to be sick to gain sympathy? Just leave, why are you so ruthless? Why do you think we were husband and wife before? Just leave, thinking that I am happy to chase you every day. Shit, I want to chase him out and explain. Damn it, Tanyuj's good cultivation was broken at this moment. A few minutes after he was so happy, he immediately regretted what he had just said and covered his face with his hands in frustration. Why did you let her go then? He finally deceived the person, but Jian'er just left without knowing how to keep pretending. Continue to be cute. Even though she knew that she was a soft-spoken person, she still couldn't hold back her temper. Speaking of the reconciled self, it is also the self who cannot help but lose his temper. Throughs like this, the year of the monkey can be chased to her. I am afraid that it will not be possible for a few years. Tanyuj regretted it to death. It felt good to vent for a while, but he regretted it for a few days. Tanyuj's eyes fell on the preserved egg and lean meat porridge that Jian Yuman brought to the room. His mouth was deflated, and he reached out to pick up the still hot porridge. The image of Jian Yuman busy in the kitchen immediately came to mind. It's been a long time since I've eaten the food she cooked. I miss her so much. He scooped the porridge in the bowl, blew it, and put it into his mouth. The beautiful taste immediately conquered his taste buds. His dissatisfaction disappeared instantly, and there was no unhappiness left. Although they parted ways on bad terms, at least they tricked Jian'er into making him a meal of preserved egg and lean meat porridge, so it didn't result in anything. After eating these, he also swept away the porridge in the pot. He was very full and continued to eat all the porridge. After eating the porridge, I calmed down and began to repent of my previous actions. Then I called Ji-fan for help. As a result, I was complained and despised by Ji-fan, and was severely criticized. I didn't cherish such a good opportunity. Anyway, I was scolded for a while. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 846. Chapter 846 Jealous Women 3. Tanyuj did not expect that Jian Yuman would react so violently, but as a representative of shameless people, even if he suffered a setback this time, he still adhered to the highest purpose of being shameless. Jian Yuman couldn't calm down. Tanyuj's pitiful appearance always appeared in her mind. She couldn't figure out what Tanyuj's purpose was. Is it fun to play with her? Pretending to be sick eats her up. Although she kept saying that she had suffered a loss, in her heart she liked his careless and ruffian attitude. After leaving him, she felt at peace. She actually didn't feel any disgust in her heart, and she was not disgusted with what he did. Just because this made her even more angry with herself. Whether it was more than 2 years ago or now, she would always get upset after being flirted with a few times by him, and her little heart, which had finally calmed down, would beat rapidly for him again. In the evening of the next day, Jian Yuman, dressed in a neat professional suit, accompanied Minister Jordan to a dinner party. This dinner was attended by a large number of people, and there were many big shots present. It was also a banquet that was not open to the public. As a translator, Jian Yuman and Dick, 2 translators, accompanied Minister Jordan to the banquet. This banquet is more like a banquet for making friends. It has no clear purpose, but all kinds of people are invited. Many beautiful young ladies will attend, looking for some young talents to be their husbands. There are quite a few who are accompanied by translators. There are not many who are as outstanding as Jian Yuman and are noticed wherever they go. Just after entering the banquet, Jian Yuman noticed a crowd. It was clearly a group of people surrounding one person. Tanyuj was the focus of attention wherever he went. Tanyuj came earlier than Jian Yuman. He was also invited to attend the banquet today, so he arrived 5 minutes early. There was already a group of people talking around him, and the people surrounding him were mainly women, including Jian Yuman. Yiman met Anil several times. Seeing this scene, Jian Yuman sneered. As expected of Tanyuj, he always flirted with women wherever he went. Seeing him flying like a butterfly among a bunch of flowers, I felt unhappy. Yesterday, I pretended to be sick, and it was still 40 degrees. Today, I appeared in front of the public in full swing. I didn't know how long I could pretend to be sick. By now, Minister Chiao An's eyes fell on Tang Yuge, and then on the face of Qian Yuman, who looked unhappy, and then grinned. "You two go find some food, and I'll go talk to a wife I know well." Dick and Qian Yuman were slightly surprised and looked at each other without saying anything. When they arrived at the scene today, they found that today's banquet did not seem to require the company of their two translators. This banquet was more like a party prepared to make friends and expand contacts. Most people brought female companions, and occasionally special assistants. Translators like them were rare. They were still wondering why Minister Jordan brought the two of them here. Unexpectedly, after arriving, he left them alone to find someone to play with. Of course Qian Yuman didn't know this. Tang Yuge specifically called Minister Jordan to tell him that he must bring Qian Yuman to this banquet. He didn't want Qian Yuman to find out what he was thinking. Minister Jordan brought Dick with him. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 847. Chapter 847 Jealous Women 4. They said they were looking for someone to chat with in private, but the actual purpose was to make Qian Yuman alone so that Tang Yuge could hook up with her. As soon as Qian Yuman was alone, Tang Yuge, who had been lurking for a long time, noticed it. However, he underestimated his charm and was surrounded by a group of women. For a while, he couldn't get around to pester Qian Yuman. He was a little annoyed, especially he glanced at Dick's presence next to Qian Yuman. With just one glance, he realized that Dick was looking at Qian Yuman in the wrong way. He was obviously interested in Qian Yuman, which made him feel even more unhappy. At this moment, Qian Yuman looked around and decided to find a glass of wine. Dick beside her did not move away and chatted with her. "May, what do you think Minister Jordan brought us here for today?" When Dick faced Minister Jordan's departure, he felt so happy that he could get along with Qian Yuman legitimately. "I don't know, whatever he wants to do." Qian Yuman walked quickly towards a waiter who was walking around the banquet venue. Her target was the red wine on his tray. "May, I think Minister Jordan doesn't need us to accompany him today. Why don't we find a place to talk? After all, this environment is not suitable for us. If I don't come to work, I really can't show up in this kind of situation, especially when I look at him coming. Not to mention the celebrities who are walking away, they have a little inferiority complex." Dick laughed and glanced around the surrounding environment. There were indeed many beautiful ladies and men who unconsciously exuded a strong aura. There was no comparison between Dick and these men, and his aura was not on the same level at all. Qian Yuman glanced around, then at Dick, and smiled lightly. She did not feel this way. She had participated in some such occasions when she was a child, but the scale was so large and the status of the characters was not so powerful. However, in the few months after marrying Tang Yuge, she had improved significantly in this area. Now facing these, she can calm down and not feel abrupt. Qian Yuman got a glass of red wine from the waiter's tray, sniffed it gently, and her eyes instantly lit up. It is the Chateau Lafite that she likes to drink. Although the vintage is good, it is not the best vintage. Qian Yuman drank the wine happily. Dick was still chirping next to her, and she also responded repeatedly. She was immersed in the joy of drinking a small drink. After drinking one cup after another, she accidentally drank the third cup. She wasn't even drunk at all. "May, don't drink too much, or you will be scolded by Minister Jordan." Dick also took a glass, but only drank half of it. When he saw Qian Yuman preparing to take the fourth cup, he couldn't help but remind him. "I have my own sense of propriety. It's amazing how drunk she can be with 3 half-full glasses of red wine. Give her 10 times that amount without a hint of sway." "Hey, isn't this my cousin?" At this moment, a sharp voice came from diagonally opposite Jian Yuman. Hearing a somewhat familiar voice, Jian Yuman looked up and saw a face she hadn't seen in 3 years. Jian Yunyun's walking posture was a bit coquettish, and she walked towards Jian Yuman with her twisted, with a trace of ridicule on her face. She was accompanied by a blonde foreign girl. The two walked very close to each other and had a good relationship. The moment Jian Yuman saw Jian Yunyun, a feeling of nausea arose in her heart. Even if she hadn't seen her for 3 years, the moment she saw Jian Yunyun, a bunch of bad memories would appear in her mind. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 848. Chapter 848 Jealous Women 5. She stayed at Jian Yunyun's house for 3 years, and was often ridiculed by Jian Yunyun's mother and daughter. Later, her uncle's family even deceived her crazily and used her lifelong happiness for profit. Her mother was obviously taken away by someone, and she even lied about being in the hospital. She found out that her mother was missing and said that her mother was dead, causing her to cry in vain all day and night. She has always been disgusted by what her uncle's family did. Later, when they met in public, she did some disgusting things to Jian Yuman, and was severely punished by Tang Yuj, Jian Yuman's husband at the time. I haven't seen each other for a long time. I didn't expect that it would be 3 years before we met again. Jian Yunyun has not been idle in the past few years, especially after Uncle Jian was suppressed by Tang Yuj. The family situation has not been very good. In the past few years, she has been like a butterfly, flying among a bunch of rich people, trying to find a good backer. Especially after being humiliated by Jian Yuman, she wanted to get back. I knew how powerful Tang Yuj was back then, so I just thought about it a lot and couldn't take any actual action. After all, no matter how hard we fight, it is impossible to defeat Jian Yuman, who is the wife of the chairman of the Emgrand Group. However, after Jian Yuman and Tang Yuj divorced more than 2 years ago, she knew that her opportunity had come. In the past few years, she had actively entered into a higher level of upper-class society. After 3 years of hard work, her results were still very good. Successful. For example, the daughter of an entertainment tycoon from country M who is next to her now has successfully become a member of her best friend's circle. Through her status, she has met many young talents and participated in many similar high society banquets. Although she has good means, her background is still much lower. Many rich people regard her as a plaything and do not show much sincerity to her. It seems that she has successfully entered the upper class, but in fact she is more like a social butterfly. She would pounce on him as long as he offered her some sweetness, and recently she even got involved with a married oil tycoon. Due to the tycoon's extremely high status, even if he was his mistress outside, she would be able to walk with her head held high. "Hey, isn't this my cousin?" Jian Yunyun and her best friend Lisa saw Jian Yuman standing with a foreign man from a distance. As the two of them were women who often attended some large banquets, they could tell at a glance that Dick was identity of. Although the clothes Dick was wearing were also famous brands, they were not luxury goods that ordinary people could not afford. In addition, his demeanor was a bit out of place here. I immediately guessed that this person's identity must be a small person like an assistant to a celebrity. Having not seen Jian Yuman for many years, Jian Yunyun, who had a high status, naturally would not let it go when she saw it, so she walked over with 2 legs to find trouble for Jian Yuman. Jian Yuman, who was drinking, saw a familiar figure, frowned and turned away from looking at her. "Cousin, why are you ignoring your sister?" Jian Yunyun came over with a smile on her face. Her eyes were not as happy as if she hadn't seen her sister for a long time. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the disdain and even mockery in her eyes. Dick heard the woman calling May and couldn't help but take a second look. "May, is this person your relative?" "Fellow? How could she be a relative?" I have nothing to do with her. Jian slightly raised the corners of her lips in mockery. As early as 3 years ago, she broke away from her uncle's family. Jian didn't take it seriously. She had guessed what Jian was saying before she came here. She didn't come here just to reminisce about old times. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 849. Chapter 849 Jealous Women 6. In the past few years, she was looking forward to meeting Jian on some occasion, because she knew that Jian had divorced and lost her support. She was just the daughter of an ordinary wealthy family, and she was no longer the aloof person she used to be. People. With her current status, she can easily get into trouble. The humiliation she suffered a few years ago is still in her mind, and she thinks that with Tang Yuj, her superior husband, to protect her, she will never be able to compete with Jian in this life. But things are different now. Jian, as a divorced woman, is not a little bit different from her, an unmarried woman with blooming flowers. Jian was very happy when she learned that Jian was divorced. She finally met her again on a high-level occasion. How could she let go of this opportunity? Cousin, why don't you recognize me? We have never contacted each other since you got divorced. As my sister, I am concerned about your current situation. You can't be unwilling to face your family just because you are divorced. Jian sounded very regretful, but her eyes were sarcastic, and she even winked at the man next to Jian intentionally or unintentionally. Since coming here, she has discovered that Dick is interested in Jian, acting as a flower protector. This makes Jian unhappy. A divorced woman actually has a suitor. Even if the suitor is not a rich man, it can be seen that he is a social elite. Divorced, Dick understood what Jian said, opened his mouth in surprise, and looked at Jian. I never expected that Jian, who existed like a goddess, was actually a divorced woman. She is not very young yet, so she has already experienced marital setbacks. However, they Westerners don't care too much about whether the other person is divorced. In their opinion, being in love is the most important thing, so their mentality towards Jian has not changed much. Jian face darkened, and she turned to glare at Jian. Cousin, don't bite me. I feel sick when I see your disgusting face. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Being associated with you will only tarnish my character. Get out. Jian shouted angrily, turning around and leaving like a proud phoenix. Jian was no longer calm, and immediately rushed towards Jian, trying to grab Jian's hair, but the sharp-eyed Jian noticed her, and turned around to avoid it. Jian has never been a weakling who was beaten while standing. She has learned self-defense skills in the past few years. She rotated her body and stretched out her long legs to lightly kick Jian on the back of her knees. Jian could no longer stand and move forward. He fell, kneeling on the ground with one foot and supporting the ground with one hand. The red wine in his hand just happened to splash onto the black dress of his best friend Lisa. With a scream, Lisa, who was wearing exquisite makeup, had a slightly distorted facial expression. She opened her hands and looked down at the wine stains on her clothes. Although she was wearing a black dress, she could still tell that the color of one area was different from other areas. This made Lisa scream and immediately glared at Jian. Although she knew this was all an accident, it still made her angry. The people around them stopped what they were doing because of this sudden incident, and the surroundings became very quiet. Everyone's eyes were looking at Lisa and Jian, who were embarrassed. Of course, more eyes would be looking at the cold, arrogant, and expressionless Jian was very interested in Jian, who was wearing a women's suit. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 850. Chapter 850 Jealous Women 7. Lisa felt humiliated like never before. She had just come here to watch the fun with her best friends, but she didn't expect that she would be implicated. Even though she knew Jianyuman didn't mean it, she could not bear to have her become the focus of the scandal. Before she could get angry, there was sudden applause from the side. Lisa, who was about to get angry, glared over, but saw a picture of a woman with an extremely bright smile, which made her feel sick. Sister Manman is so powerful. I admire her ability to kill two birds with one stone. The person who spoke was Anil, a cheerful and sunny woman. Not far away, she saw Lisa and others trying to embarrass Jianyuman. Before she could wait, when she came over, the situation here changed drastically, and she couldn't help but applaud and cheer. Another beautiful woman appears, this is what the onlookers think. Just now, we saw three beauties with their own characteristics confronting each other. Unexpectedly, another person appeared. The onlookers naturally recognized Jianyuman, the three unexpected people, and some also recognized Jianyuman as the translator accompanying Minister Jordan. Jianyuman looked at Anil, who was applauding, and felt depressed, wondering why Anil appeared in front of her again. Jianyuman was annoyed for a while, but she quickly went to get a handkerchief and wiped Lisa's skirt while apologizing. Although the two are best friends, Jianyuman knows that she is just someone who is attached to Lisa and must not offend Lisa and turn against her. Lisa didn't look at Jianyuman either. The moment she saw Anil, the fighting cells in her body rose. She didn't need any reason. She just didn't get along with Anil. Every time she saw her, she would make some sarcastic remarks. Be happy and don't mind your own business. Why don't you care? Sister Manman and I are friends. I see that you are planning to embarrass Sister Manman, so I naturally want to help her. Anil hugged Jianyuman intimately, regardless of whether Jianyuman I don't really want to be intimate with her. To be honest, Jianyuman was somewhat used to Anil's familiarity. In addition, she was obviously trying to help him this time, so his favorable impression of her improved a bit. Yil, thank you, but I will handle this matter myself. Jianyuman declined Anil's kindness. She still had a look and saw that Lisa and Anil had been at odds for a long time and were already disliked by many people. She likes to keep a low profile and doesn't want to be the center of attention. If Anil joins, this matter will not be easy to deal with. She said that she also accompanied Minister Jordan to the banquet on behalf of Country F. It would not do her any good to make the matter bigger. Sister Manman, it's okay. You are still afraid of her. Let me tell you. This woman with a crooked mouth and obvious plastic surgery is called Lisa. She also likes Yuj and is my love rival. Every time she sees Yuj it's as sticky as brown candy and can't be driven away. However, Yuj is very polite when he talks to her. She sees that Yuj and I have a good relationship, so she is very jealous of me. She will trouble me when she sees me. Already used to it. Of course she was also unhappy with Lisa and would make trouble for her no matter what. This time when she saw Lisa being embarrassed, she immediately jumped out and taunted her. Like Tang Yuj. Jianyuman looked at Lisa a little differently. When she saw Lisa just now, she didn't say anything. After all, she accidentally soiled Lisa, so she originally planned to apologize. After knowing that she liked Tang Yuj, the words got stuck in my throat unconsciously. End of this chapter.